Thanks everyone for coming. So we have an exciting panel. We have Alex from Aurora Labs. We have Dean Tribble from Agoric, Derek Yu from PureStake, and Eric Chen from Injective. And our panel is about building your dev community. So building a developer community is really hard. I'm an investor at Delphi Ventures and one of the co-founders, and we look for active developer communities, and they're really hard to find, right? We've seen L1s with billions of dollars in capital, yet very few developers because you just can't pay good developers to come over. You need to have a real thesis. I'm curious everybody's take here. I guess we could start and move down, but attracting developers begins with having a real foundational first principles thesis on the project you're building to attract the right class of developers. How have you thought through this question, and what is your approach or what is your sell to a developer from that standpoint?
Sure. So for Moonbeam, Moonbeam is an L1, EVM compatible, but focused on cross-chain use cases. So I think that's part of the differentiation angle that helps attract a lot of use cases to Moonbeam. And it's uniquely situated. Being a parachain on Polkadot means that you kind of have unique access to substrate-like functionality, other parachains, assets like Dot. And so that's like some other uniqueness that Moonbeam provides.
Nice. Alex?
Yeah, for Aurora, it's pretty similar to Moonbeam. We're EVM compatible. That's why we have an instant tap into the Ethereum ecosystem, and anyone who is knowing Solidity stack or the stack of different infrastructure projects on top of Ethereum, they're instantly able to work with Aurora. For us, the differentiation point is the better user experience. So we are focused a lot on simplifying things. So, for example, on Aurora, there is an ability for dApps to have zero transaction costs and actually not exposing any per transaction payments to the users. And this is something for us. So we're looking forward the companies that are really taking care of the use case instead of the business model of the protocol.
Eric, what about you? It's hard to see.
Yeah, so for Injective's case, it's certainly about focus on, first of all, contributing to the core stack of the Injective blockchain, which is a lightning fast, highly interoperable layer 1 blockchain that has a lot of the out-of-the-box modules for specifically DeFi developers and DeFi applications. So this the kind of goalpost for Injective Labs' effort in terms of onboarding developers and supporting developers is very, very clear compared to a lot of the monolithic environments, because you know exactly which subset of developer to look for, what type of value prop or pain points they're dealing with, and more importantly, what is the best possible environment that you can build as a base layer infrastructure and as kind of like this ecosystem to help them best succeed. So I would say for Injective's case, it's somewhat of an easier task compared to a lot of the generalized environments, for sure.
Dean, how about you?
So Agoric is a blockchain for building smart contracts in hardened JavaScript. So our target is very much mainstream developers. And we start with crypto developers, but it's mainstream developers. So it's sort of quite a different target from most of the other chains out there. And there's 15 million JavaScript developers, and that's sort of the biggest sort of hook is that, with JavaScript plus frameworks that in the style they're familiar with, React.js kinds of frameworks for doing DeFi, for doing governance, for doing NFTs, and that's been compelling to at least to several developers that we approach, and they respond to oh my gosh, something that's actually a tool for me.
So a lot of the times on the venture side, I'm not a developer, but looking at founders, CEOs, people that come from Web 2, a lot of these founders fail at crypto because they don't fully embrace the ethos of the space. They use crypto as a small tool, something to make money on, something to bootstrap, but they're never fully embraced. Do you guys see an issue bringing Web 2 devs into Web 3, and how do you get them to fully embrace the languages and the ethos of crypto? Maybe we'll go in the reverse because, Dean, this is up your alley.
So when you think about the current ecosystems we have of a few thousand developers or a few hundred developers around these things, that a few thousand is great. That's a really big number. It can be really active. You can have people fully immersed. You get tribes out of that. When you talk about 10,000, 100,000, 10 million developers, 5 million for React and 3 million for Vue, I think it is. It's different. The ecosystems are different. And so for those people, the value you're bringing is you help them solve their problem. Right, so if they've got a ticketing system, they've got a new thing they want to do there, they don't need to embrace it in order to embrace the benefits that solve their problem and go forward and integrate into their part of a larger ecosystem, right? When you're looking at a mission and an ecosystem, there you want embrace, you want everyone supporting each other and so forth. But to grow past that, we've got to just solve their problem and help them achieve the greatness that they want to achieve.
Yeah, I'm guessing for like applications on top of Injective, it's a lot more about expanding the possibility and the limitations that they were previously facing within like a monolithic environment. When you're building on Ethereum, when you're building on top of like Solana or any type of generalized environment, you're always going to be faced with limitations, especially when it comes to DeFi, as we all know, related to MEV, et cetera. You're always going to be like having issue or like butting head against like other type of verticals where they might have different types of computational demand or storage demand or data availability demand, et cetera. And by kind of building this entire infrastructure that's specifically tailored to this suite of application and this stack of it, a lot of things that was not possible before now becomes possible. Like for example, currently Helix, Dexterium, Dojo, et cetera, they're basically powering a highly efficient and fully on-chain, composable, and highly dynamic kind of like order book-based exchange application, all within basically 5 hours of work at most to like get started. And I would say that by basically kind of like narrowing down the scope of the infrastructure and specifically targeting like a subset of developer that are kind of like already like kind of taking the crypto, I guess like red pill, or basically those who are kind of like turned away, be like, hey, like I'm like a HFT guy, or like I'm like a like a Rust guy, or I'm just trying to build like infrastructures that truly leverage the value props of crypto, solve certain problems within the Web2 space, or the I guess like the non-digital world. But Ethereum was not, like sensible for me. It was, or like something else was too difficult, or I have to build my own layer 2 solution, et cetera. Because that's kind of like how I personally started. Like now there's an environment for that, and I think there's going to be more and more ecosystems like that really kind of ensures that this is a really great environment for this specific vertical, and you're not kind of like sacrificing composability, you're not really sacrificing access to liquidity, you're not really sacrificing user experience thanks to Cosmos interoperability and a lot of the bridging infrastructure integrations to basically make it so that you outcompete by the merits of your application.
The biggest challenge that I have seen across my 7 or almost 8 years in crypto, in blockchain mainly, less in crypto, is that crypto scene developed a pretty allergic reaction for ordinary developers. And many people are seeing that this is all about scam, and unfortunately, the most recent news from the whole vertical are supporting this narrative. So we kind of need to figure out how we are going to overcome this, especially in the light of the regulations tightening and the questions that regulators have to us. And we need to have a clear way forward for the Web2 developers to be able to onboard without carrying these risks of the bad image and potentially inability to operate in some short period of time from now because of the uncertainty, the regulatory uncertainty. So, but if we are talking about the maturity of the tech, the maturity of the programming languages and tools around it, they are pretty okay. In comparison to many other verticals, blockchain tech is in a better position. So learning it is not that hard. The thing that is hard is to make a good business.
Yeah, I think on our end, Moonbeam definitely focused on more crypto native like developers. If you look at the activity on there, it's DeFi, NFT use cases, gaming, and so I think we've been studying this kind of question quite a bit internally to say, well, how can we get more kind of real world developers in? And while we don't have all the answers yet, we have learned some things that if you look at kind of the documentation, the other kinds of materials that are around a typical crypto project, they're pretty inappropriate for mainstream developers, right? They already assume quite a bit of knowledge about how blockchains work, how crypto works, wallets, like cryptographic schemes. And so I think that what we've realized is that you really do need, like, especially if you're using your dev portal as kind of the intake point, like the first touch point for the developers, it needs to look quite a bit different when you're targeting normie like devs versus like crypto devs. And so I think that's, or it's already a lot of effort to put together like a documentation site and a dev portal. Yeah, I think that, there's definitely like a different kind of like content and tutorials are needed to like help explain a lot of concepts, to folks that are coming in for the first time. That's our realization.
Who sticks around more, the Web 2 devs you guys bring in or the Web 3 devs? I mean, people that come in and leave your community. Which are stickier for anyone?
Well, for us, and I believe for Derek too, as he said, mainly right now for EVM-compatible chains, it's already existing developers that are able to work with these tools. It's just super simple, and I believe it's also super important to give an opportunity for businesses to not to have a vendor lock-in, right? And not to stick with one ecosystem that potentially may be doomed to fail because of other participants misbehaving. And yeah, EVM here is in fact a de facto standard that works almost everywhere. So from that standpoint, that's at the moment that's the case. Though I really value the approach of getting JavaScript developers. Actually, I thought that there are 20 million, not 15. Actually, 20 million.
Even better.
It probably depends on who's counting.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's great that Agoric has this thing. Aurora is built on top of Near protocol, and Near also launched the support of the JavaScript. So there are more and more projects that are using all of this educated talent out there, to bring them in the Web3 family.
Dean, do you have anything to add there? I know you're.
I mean, not on your original question. I don't have enough numbers as to who, because most people are pretty much sticking around. So.
No, that's good to hear. Just switching gears a little bit, business development is a massively underrated skill in crypto. Not financial advice, but Polygon Matic has seriously crushed BizDev. I think they're like the poster child for getting out there and really convincing people to come over. How do you guys spend your time between building the tech and BizDev? Because you could have the best tech in the world, but I think in crypto we've generally overrated the fact that the best tech will attract people.
I'd like to jump in there. So we have a great BizDev team, and it's really valuable. There's kind of two modes of which we're bringing devs in. So if you talk about what's that strategy, it's a few partners that are, that you do BizDev with, that they're working on things that demonstrate some key element of the infrastructure. They're great developers, so we want their feedback early, and they're going to be titans in the community as it grows out going forward, right? And that's something where we will keep doing that as BizDev to bring in these partners that enhance and enrich the ecosystem and fill out key ecosystem roles and application functions. But after that, when you go for an actual DevRel's funnel, that number goes up to where you cannot integrate with or work with individuals there. So these two things are quite complementary to each other, where large organization come in and they can go, you've got 100 developers, here's the docs, and they've got to be awesome docs, and they've you've got to have code that works and test environments that works and best development environments on the planet and all those things, and then they go, okay, this is pretty much what I expect. I can use this stuff, right? And but the BizDev lays the groundwork, and then you still need this thing that really is not BizDev. It really is this DevRel thing to get many, many more developers that come in than you can talk to.
I'd agree with that. That DevRel for sure. That you need the working product. That's a given. But I'd say that I see a lot of underinvestment in DevRel. I'd say, right. And this basically, it's like if in a regular business, it's like your support or your customer service, if you want to think of it that way. And I still meet teams sometimes that have 1, 2 of these folks. I mean, that's not a lot of customer service to go around to hundreds of developers. So I think that's definitely an area that. We've invested in a bunch and it pays off. There is a point though around scalability. So I see them all as kind of like lead sources, right? So there's a whole bunch of things you do to generate leads and interest. You have the support function, but ultimately it resembles, I think it's the right way to think of it as like a B2B business motion, right? So you need basic things. You need a CRM. You need a way to track these leads. You need you need a process basically, right? And you need to make sure that then any resources you do have get applied into like the most interesting opportunities.
Injective Labs is like notorious for having, never really grown the BD team, or basically never exceeding, I guess, like 3 or 4 people, including myself. Okay, like 2 to 3 people, and I think like proper business development, it's really a quality over quantity type of work. At least that's a thesis at like Injective Labs, and it's very, very critical for the 0 to 1 process, where you're starting off with the ecosystem, you're starting off with the infrastructure, you're starting off with the environment, and you want to be on the face level, from like a BD perspective, to interface with these developers, to interface with existing projects, to understand, what is the shortcoming of the existing infrastructure, what can you do to improve, what do people truly want. And then once you get through that 0 to 1 phase, where you show some initial success, some projects are building really, really cool applications on top of you. It also informs how your product should change, and how everything that you build from an infrastructure level, from like a kind of core level, should kind of evolve to fit around those needs. And basically, integrations, partnerships, stuff like that. In the long run, it doesn't really matter. It gets you, like incremental value in the short term. Certainly, it's very useful from a strategic perspective. But at the end of the day, it's about evolving with the user base, with the developer base, and having the best environment where there can be thousands, if not billions. Well, billions a stretch, if not millions of developers that can just come on to the platform, to the ecosystem, build the stuff that they're looking for, never having to talk to a single person ever, and like truly demonstrate their value prop. Now that is a very, very idealistic environment, but that's what everyone should strive for, because that's what Ethereum's like.
I would like to continue on what Eric was saying. So. Yeah, Polygon was doing an absolutely epic job in terms of securing the partnerships, but then and like just put in my head off for Sandeep and the team. So that was an exceptional BD effort. But now we are able to take a look at what was happening because of this, right? So if we are able to take a look at the metrics that they were striving for with this all the announcements, and these are the token metrics actually, because in many of the partnerships that are there are no actual transactions created. They're just yet to be there in the future. So and from that standpoint, we see that the way how the tokens are influenced is that yes, there is a spike, but then things are coming back to normal. And yeah, continuing on what Eric was saying, the important thing is more as a product market fit, because the marketing announcements are very short lived, and it is really, really important to find good sustainable use cases that are actually creating value. And that's why I feel that there is, in this particular bear market, there is a shift towards the actual value that is created, and an ability to transfer this value, or like for once to kind of get a little bit of this value, but not too much, not to kill the ecosystem that evolves. And it is more important to distribute this value in between the projects inside of the ecosystem to get the network effect and the flywheel going. So that's a delicate balance there, yeah, product market fit. That's I believe the thing that everyone has in the blockchain have struggles, except for maybe some specific verticals like DeFi.
So product market fit is a really good, I guess, next topic. So you guys are all founders yourselves. You've created your own projects. There's no one better that knows what needs to be built on your projects than you guys, right? But it seems like you're all building for the inbounds. Do you guys ever turn the table and say, this is what I want built. I've located a couple of developers I think can really crush this. They're potentially building something else. Maybe I'll swap them out. When do you turn the table on that, or do you not?
I can jump in. I mean, I know that is a practice that has happened in like other L1 ecosystems. We have not. I think that it's tempting, but it probably messes with like the vibe in the ecosystem, right? So, there's nothing more discouraging to a set of developers that are trying to build something and make a go of an ecosystem than to know that they're competing with the state, right? The state's going to come in and kind of, oh, well, do you have a DEX? Well, guess what?
I don't like what you're building. Redo it.
This DEX is going to be the one that like wins and gets liquidity incentives and what, so that will have a chilling effect across like the whole ecosystem. So, I mean, at least I think it can be done. If you're going to do it, then you got to like do it all the way. I think the other approach is just to be more like hands off, right, and then kind of let what happens.
We have a bounty program, part of that biz dev element of get a few, but it's more about planting seeds rather than funding a big effort. It sort of gets something started, or it gets a component built, because we're very much component style approach. And so getting a few devs interested in a particular topic with a bounty, so now you've got a discussion about it and you've planted that seed and something grows of it. We've got for our permissioned phase, which is coming up later this year, six groups lined up, of which 4 of them started from some bounty. And so it wasn't, there's this concern of you don't want to be like blessing winners unless it's some core part of the ecosystem. But planting seeds is really valuable. And that's something that a lot of teams do. It needs to very much not be funding big development from my perspective, because again, when you're in small communities, you can do that. Money runs out and everyone runs away. You're getting the wrong people. You're not getting people that really realize the value of what you're bringing to them, and they need that value. And if you're going to get 1,000 applications, 10,000 applications, millions of developers, you can't pay them all. It's got to be that you brought them value. And it's back to, you brought them real use cases, you brought them something they could do. We still have a few things that we know we want that are complementary, that are part of building out what the foundation is that everyone else will lay on, and funding those and seeding those so people can pick them up and run with it is certainly very viable for that part.
So like money, right? Like runs the world. There's projects out there that are just throwing money. I mean, it was easy to get 5, 10, 20 million in the bull market from a project, from an L1, to build something that might not even be viable, right? But the problem is when you're offering projects your token, they're basically market selling as they vest to pay OpEx. The goal is that their contributions are worth more in value to your token than what the value is that they're selling to pay their expenses. It seems like that's a crazy death cycle in a sense, because that's basically venture investing on steroids with new money. How do you guys handle, I mean, Dean, you kind of answered this, so maybe we'll go in the reverse, but how do you guys handle allocation sizing on ecosystem grants of any kind to projects building in your ecosystems?
You want to start from someone else? Yeah.
Anybody, yeah, whoever's first.
Because I'll answer.
For Injective's case, like Open DeFi Foundation certainly handles most of the grant process. I would say like the general culture of a lot of the folks involved in the Injective ecosystem is that it's very much merit-based and like value-based. We generally go through the thinking exercise of if labs were to do it themselves, which labs have built a lot of products themselves, unfortunately. And what would the cost be? What would basically the overall like development lifecycle be? How much would it specifically cost if we were to do it ourselves? And we use that as like a thinking exercise in terms of sizing specific grants and specific efforts. So this also means that like unfortunately Open DeFi Foundation and the community spend pool, et cetera, doesn't really give out grants that often. Certainly, I think in the past, a lot of folks wish that the community spend pool was more active, or the foundation was more active in like generally like providing a lot of grants and a lot of funding to a lot of early stage projects. But I would say like in the current market, it's certainly a decent call because it's not necessarily from like a funding or like a value flow perspective, but more importantly, like for projects that are coming to you and asking for like a large sum of grant, there's basically like a mismatch in like incentives. Once they get the grant, once they hit the milestone, they no longer, they kind of skipped over like building thesis, building value prop, building like a market or sustainable flow of value. They generally just focus on one milestone after the other. That being said, like a lot of projects do need a lot of Kickstarter money, so it's a balance.
So for us, we have been around here for already a couple of years, and we have gathered quite a lot of statistics. We always have been very open with the community about the funding that is allocated to the project. And from that standpoint, we were able to get all of these statistics. And what we see is that the teams who are coming in and asking for a grant, usually they are not delivering, and that they are kind of not interested in delivery, I would say. They're interested in getting money. While instead, the top-notch teams, they're actually coming in and asking, okay, can you please give us introductions to the VCs, to the investors? Can you please help us with the marketing? Can you tap us into your marketing pipeline so all of the news that we are creating are actually distributed through much bigger channels that they have? And from that standpoint, these teams are, money is quite secondary for them. With some specific verticals like DeFi, though, they are asking for some allocations in order to bootstrap the liquidity, and that's a critical piece there. But this money is much lower than is required for them to exist and to develop the project. I do believe that grants as a concept was introduced in this unhealthy behavior inside of the vertical, because grants is not something that you expect for just startups, right? If you're from the Silicon Valley, the way how you are getting the first money to be able to build something is you are getting to get in touch with angel investors, right? And angel investors are not giving you money for free, right? So they want something, and this I don't know when it happened. Probably it's just everything is all because of the bull market, that the investment thesis was shifted into grants thesis. And then just it spoiled lots of people. So we now need to get back to normal, I would say. And developers that are just developing, that's good, and then it should be fun. If they would like to step up and think of what they're doing as of a business, then they need to think of the investments and kind of more natural things.
Cool, that's a good answer.
I was just going to comment on that. I mean, the $10 million days are are over, right? So on the other hand, having enough money to just pay for salaries for some base salary to work, I mean that's pretty reasonable. And I think if I look at where our thinking has evolved, is that the grants for the Moonbeam Foundation puts out are still a great lead source for developers. But the question these days is sustainability, right? What is it that it takes to get a project like you was being described that has product market fit, that generates enough protocol revenues, let's say, to sustain a small 5-6 person team. You actually need quite a bit of usage to get there. And so the pipeline kind of looks like, okay, so you have dev teams coming in for grants. That's a great lead source. There's obviously some filtering, then there's some milestones put in front of them to see if they can deliver. Then an accelerator, there's a Moonbeam accelerator, for example, that can kind of take teams that have demonstrated that. Then there's some teaching that goes on to teach those teams about things like especially BD and marketing, I'd say, is where a lot of teams with technical founding teams they just don't know as much. But ultimately, you want to get to a point where those teams can get funding from a VC. And I think a lot of teams just aren't. They need to go through some process to get to the point where they can successfully raise VC funding. And so there's an ecosystem fund on the Moonbeam side. So that's kind of there's a funnel that starts off quite wide, and then you end up with maybe, if you're lucky, some small number out the other end.
So we have 10 seconds left per guest. Dean, let's start with you. Just quick recap of your project for developers.
Smart contracts in JavaScript for the millions of mainstream developers out there. And you all here.
Eric?
Blockchain bill for finance.
Alex?
EVM that has at last good user experience.
Derek?
EVM focused on interoperability use cases.
You guys are wicked smart. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.